Okay, so today we're diving into Shabd. Have you heard of this before?
It's one of those things, even if the word is unfamiliar, it points to something I think many people have sensed or wondered about, this connection between our inner selves and spirituality.
Right, exactly. And we've got all these sources, spiritual writings, stories of people's experiences, even like these really powerful metaphors, all grappling with Shabd. And our goal is, well, it's not just to define it, but to really get at how it might already be playing a role in our lives.
And what's interesting is how our source uses shabd, word, sound, almost like they're interchangeable at times.
Yeah, and that struck me too. Like it's hinting that this isn't some totally abstract thing, but something we can actually perceive?
Absolutely. And by grounding it in those terms, right? Word, sound, it suddenly makes this big universal force relatable. Because we all know what it means to hear something, to receive a message. And it makes you wonder, what is that message?
Right. And here's where it gets even wilder. These texts are saying Shabbat isn't out there somewhere, but within each of us. This untapped potential almost.
Exactly. Always present. The potential's always there, but we need to tune it. Think about like the sun and a water droplet, right? The
Yeah.
sun's always shining, but it takes focused sunlight to make the water evaporate, to transform it. So Charbad's always there, but it's our focused attention, our awareness, that allows us to really tap into its power.
That makes me think about those moments when like an insight hits you out of the blue, almost like it was always there, we just weren't paying attention. But okay, if Shawud is inside us, what's it like to actually experience it?
Well, it's described in our source as this a really fascinating blend of light and sound, and this is key. It's tied to our level of consciousness. It's not just our physical senses, but an inner perception, and that gets more intense as our awareness grows.
So the deeper our connection with Shrub, the more intense those experiences of light and sound become.
That's the idea. Like with Buddha, he starts by seeing flashes of light, but as his consciousness expands, the light intensifies. So it's not Sharub that changes, but our ability to experience it. Like you're fine-tuning a radio to get a clearer signal.
Makes sense. But here's where I'm tripping up a bit. We're told Shabd is this incredibly pure force, but it also purifies us, cleanses impurities. So which is it? Is it pure or does it purify? How does that even work?
It seems like a paradox, right? But the texts use these really helpful examples, like imagine a rough sandstone smoothing out a rusty knife. The sandstone itself is still pure, but it's abrasive, so it cleanses the blade.
Ah, okay. So it's not that Shabd is absorbing the bad stuff, but its presence helps us shed what's holding us back. Less about Shabd changing, more about us changing because of it.
Exactly. Or think about polluted streams flowing into the ocean. The ocean's vastness, its fundamental nature, that remains unchanged. But as those streams merge with it, they lose their impurities.
That's a beautiful way to put it. So if Shabbat is always present, this powerful force with the potential to purify, to guide us,
Yeah.
how do we tap into it? Where do we even begin with something so profound?
That's the million-dollar question, right? How do we access it? And our source really emphasizes conscious effort. They say it's always there, but kind of like a subtle sound, easy to miss amidst all the noise of our thoughts. So we have to make space for it.
So less about summoning Shabbat, more about quieting ourselves down so we can actually notice it. Kind of like meditation. Or those times when you just feel super present and aware.
Exactly. It's about reaching a certain state of consciousness, of receptivity, where we can tune in to its frequency. Like imagine a constant hum. It's always there, but you only really hear it when you stop and listen.
Makes you think about the protective aspect of Shab that comes up in the source material, described as a force guiding us back to something divine. But then, if it's always there, always guiding,
Hmm.
how can we still go through tough times? Why do bad things still happen?
Yeah, that's a question a lot of people ask, and our source actually tackles this head on. They say it's not about avoiding difficulty, not about changing what happens to us. The protection is deeper, more internal. Like they even use the example of missing a train or avoiding an accident. Those things might seem like blessings, but they're not the core of what Shabsurd's protection is really about.
So less about being invincible, more about finding that inner strength, that connection to something bigger to help us through the tough stuff.
Exactly. It's about finding that inner sanctuary, that unshakable core, so you can weather any storm. Pretty powerful stuff, don't you think?
It really is. Like having access to this wellspring of strength, guidance. It's always there if we know how to tune in. And speaking of guidance, our source uses some really interesting imagery. I was especially struck by the whole Holy Spirit descending like a dove thing. What do you make of that?
Oh, I love that analogy. I think it speaks to how helpful metaphors can be when we're talking about something as, well, huge as Shabd. The dove peace, gentleness, the divine, right? That really captures Shabd's nature.
Transformative, yeah, but also peaceful.
The subtle guiding presence.
Not this big aggressive force, but like a nudge in the right direction, like a dove, gliding through the air, graceful, purposeful.
Exactly. And it highlights that connecting with Shabd isn't about being overwhelmed by something, but surrendering to something within. It's a process of unfolding, not a hostile takeover.
Trusting the process, being open to where it leads. But even these metaphors, as helpful as they are, they're still just representations, right? They can point us in the right direction, but they can't fully capture what it's actually like. Like that saying, the map isn't the territory. We could talk about Shad compared to things, but actually experiencing it, that's what it's all about.
Exactly. And that's what makes this whole exploration so fascinating. It's not just theoretical, it's pointing to something real, something accessible to all of us.
It makes me think of those optical illusions. You look at the same image, but you can see different things in it.
Yeah.
Maybe Shabd is kind of like that, always there. But how we experience it depends on us. You know, our awareness, how tuned in we are.
That's a really interesting way to put it. It's not Shabd that changes, but our ability to perceive it. And that's where spiritual practice comes in, learning to quiet the mind, to become more receptive.
So it's less of a one-time discovery, more like an ongoing journey of connecting with this inner force. Maybe that starts with just paying closer attention to our inner world as much as the outer world.
Absolutely. It's a continual process of refinement, you could say, fine-tuning ourselves to a frequency that's always been there. And the more we cultivate that inner stillness, that awareness, the clearer Shabd becomes.
This deep dive has been incredible, really eye-opening. These ideas about consciousness, about being connected to something so much bigger than ourselves.
It really has been a fascinating exploration. And the best part is, it doesn't have to end here. This is an invitation to keep exploring, to listen to that quiet voice within, and see how experiencing Shabd might unfold in your own life.
Because if it's true, what we've been discussing, that Shabd is this universal force always present, then the potential for transformation, for finding that deep peace, that connection, it's always within reach. It's like maybe we've had the answers all along, we just needed to learn how to listen.
Couldn't have said better myself. It's a journey worth taking.
Absolutely. And on that note, we'll leave you with this question to ponder. If Shabd is this ever-present force, what can you do, starting today, to become more aware of it in your own life? How can you bring that awareness into each and every moment?